you and I had a consult a couple years ago.
Oh, yeah, like a long time ago. And I can't even articulate, like, even the details of it. I just know it was another diet attempt, and I was going to do HCG, and I knew that was going to be the thing, and I came across you and your book, and I was like, this is the answer, right? Like, this is, like, you know, she's going to help me work through my issues, and the diet's going to get me to the skinny body, and the world is going to be perfect.
Right.
But I can't remember any, like, I have no idea of the details of our our consultation, or, like, you know, I know, of course, that I went off of it and gained weight and all that, but, yeah.
And so a couple years later, we're on YouTube, and...
Are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, barely.
So a couple years later, you're on YouTube, and you do follow Weight Loss Apocalypse, and they had recommended, watch this one.
Yeah, like this, I mean, it's been 4 years, and, like, it was, you know, not this past weekend, but, like, 9 days ago, Saturday. I was in that place, you know what I mean? Like, about to go on another diet, and I saw one of the Weight Loss Apocalypse videos pop up, and so I started watching it, and, you know, within a couple of videos had the moment.
You had to have been miserable.
Yeah.
Like bad.
Well, and I was in that place, like, you know, I've been making some positive steps, meaning, like, getting some energy work done, letting myself be, you know what I mean? Like, I've been making some positive places.
Okay, so hold on a second. That tells me you have been very miserable.
Yes.
So, like, bad.
For another thing outside of myself to fix the problem.
Well, you were starting to, you know, when someone says, I started doing energy work, you're really looking at, you're scratching it, you're really trying to get out. You're trying to get out.
Yeah.
You know, something's wrong. Something's wrong.
Yes. Yes.
That's bad. That's bad.
Like inside. You know what I mean? Like deep core.
Yeah,
stuff.
that's
like,
what I meant by it's bad. It's dark.
Yeah.
It's dark.
Yeah.
It's not good. There's bad. It's not, you can't, it's how long can you live like that?
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely.
Oh.
Yeah. Dark.
Well, that's why when someone, like, has these moments of, like, these shifts, it's because it's not like there's a moment of clarity. It's a moment of surrendering. You're like, holy shit. I've never been willing to look at this because I didn't think I could handle it. And the moment you look at it, all of a sudden you're like, oh my God. Oh my God. Yes, of course I'd stay fat.
It's so insane. I mean, it's so insane that it just happens in a snap.
Yeah, it does.
It happens in a snap.
Yeah, but it with that said, it took a lot of suffering up until that point. You know? So it didn't happen in a snap. It happened in a lot of suffering, a lot of denial, a lot of, like, bullshit, a lot of lying to yourself, a lot of just think of what happened up to that point. Like, it was...
Let me just, like, you know, without, because, like, it's so funny, because, you know, usually my go-to is to go into my story, right? Because I need to give you all the background, give you
because you're special.
I don't even want to do that, but I just need to say is that, like, the body image stuff started when I was 4, because I'm 5 foot tall, right? I've always been short, and I've always gotten attention for my body being short, right? And so, you know, fast forward into my 20s, and then that's when the dieting started, right? That's, you know, I was never happy with my body, but then it wasn't until my 20s that the dieting started. So it's been 20 years of the diet, binge. I mean, like, the insanity that you just spoke of, like, deep, dark. And then the most recent triggers was in, like, starting in, I lost, over the course of, like, the last year, I lost 65 pounds, a very restrictive, you know, plan that I was going to have to, you know, to keep at that weight, I was going to have to do that for the rest of my life because I was a food addict, and I was never going to be able to have flour and sugar again for the rest of my life. And the things that were resonating with me, or, you know, I, of course, started to gain some weight, and the number on the scale wasn't bothering
Mm-hmm.
And so the trigger was I got to go on a diet to get back in the shorts. It's okay. I know what to do. It's an easy plan. It's fine, right?
So easy. So easy.
Yeah. And then there was another trigger, right? And then I was like, oh my God, I can't fit into these shorts. And then the final trigger was like, oh, we may be going on vacation, right? And so it was like the pressure, the anvil, like pressing. And then that's when the videos came into play. Like when I saw, you were talking about accepting the body that you're in, and you've got to leap, you've got to jump, and that's when I had those moments of like accepting my body, and I'm like, there's no way. Or like the first question that really resonates: what if you couldn't diet again ever? That you had a medical condition that you could not diet again, and that blew me away. Absolutely blew me away, because I thought, if I don't have a diet, then how am I going to fix myself? Like, how am I going to fix this misery? And then the light bulb was like, I'm in misery. The diet is only perpetuating the misery, right? It's not a fix. And then the next thought is like accepting the body. And I was like, there's no way. There's no way.
Yeah, but then you got to go back to dieting.
Yes. And then the honestly, the scenario that went into my head that was the precipice of the shift was, okay, we're a military family, so my mind always goes to like war scenarios, right? Because I've been in war, meaning like I'm at war with myself. Is that like, what if I was in a car accident, or what if I was in war and my legs were blown off?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I physically could not do anything about that. I would have to accept it. I would have to deal with it. I would have to move on in my life, and I would have to figure out a way to live and navigate this life without my legs. I would get some in a wheelchair, so my life started going there, and then that's when it was like, then if I could accept my body, my outward body without legs, why can't I accept it in this size? And that's when the shift happened. I mean, that is when it was like, oh my God.
Well, because it's in relation, in relation to your legs.
Yeah.
I mean, to someone who's obsessed with thinness, it's like losing your legs. So you go into that. A common problem people have in that is, but I could always lose weight. I can't make my legs get work again. But it's like, but the concept is the same of acceptance. Because if you can accept your weight, remember how you kind of peeled the layer off of, I'm done dieting. Now I've got to be fat forever. Yeah. All you got to do is go into acceptance. If you can go into acceptance, what happens to this insanity? Poof. It's gone.
I mean, I feel like I am just like, I feel like I have been on Diet Planet,
Yes.
And I got plopped off that planet and dropped onto Earth, and I'm walking around like, and that's what happened. When I had that shift, the next thing that I did is like, F it. I'm ordering, the idea was the shorts, right? Yeah. Oh my God, we're going to go to the lake, and these swim shorts aren't going to work, and whatever. You know what I did? I jumped on Kohl's, and I bought the next 2 sizes up.
Good for you.
I'm like, F it.
How hard was that? What would you rather do? Would you rather freaking diet and continue to binge?
Right.
What would you rather? Just go buy some bigger shorts. Accept it. Someone's going to go, oh, look at her.
Well, and if I was blind, I wouldn't be able to see the number on the back of the shorts anyway, so who freaking cares?
I know. And if someone has an opinion about, oh my God, look at her weight, she's bigger, do you really give a shit about that person if that person's really going to give a shit about your weight? Right? I know. It's so juvenile.
It's just insane that I was that insane. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've been there. I almost killed myself over it.
I know. That's what I mean.
I know.
Like, I was living that way. Like, I was in a dark place. I can't say that I went there, but like I was not living life, so what's the difference? You're not,
right? Well, I know. That's what I came to. Yeah. That's why I came down to, I might as well just commit suicide, because I can't live like this. I can't do it.
So what's the point?
There is no point. You have no freedom. You have no creativity. You have no authenticity. There is no life. You're soulless. No. You're just a body. No. You won't even inhabit your body because you're so ashamed of it, because you're in such a state of narcissism, and all of a sudden you're realizing, like, I'm afraid to gain weight because I feel like that'll kill me, but I'm dying from the inside.
Completely.
Trying to fix my weight.
Yeah.
Really quick question. I want to ask you, the concept of being a food addict from this position, from this angle that you're at this point, can you see how enabling that is? How it's so short-sighted and it completely blocks out the rest of what's going on?
Well, and it's almost paralyzing. And I say
it is.
There were two things that you said. So the food addict piece is that there's nothing I can do about it.
Nuh-uh. You're done.
Slave
forever
to being a food addict, right? I can do nothing except for not ever have sugar again. Because it will set me off.
Yeah. Right? So do you see how like that is so not? It's such a pinhole perspective. Like you're looking through a pinhole. Of course you have this dependency on food, but why? There's a big, huge story about why. That if it's not about the food. So to make it about the food is so, not only is it enabling, but it keeps people stuck inside the hellhole. You cannot escape it.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's what I was just stuck. And I was like, I have 2 kids. Like, I was living, like, a numb life. And I don't mean, like, numb from the food. I mean, like, numb where, like, there was nothing that I could think of that I could enjoy. Like, I put the mask on and put on the happy days and went through my life, right? But, like, there was no enjoyment. There was nothing. And, like, that's the place that I'm in right now is that, like, I'm walking around and it's like, it's the sun. It's the trees. Like, I went to Panera with my husband and I'm like, this is the best breakfast sandwich I've ever had. Chai tea. Oh, my God. It was so good. Like, it was really like I've been on another planet. And I feel like that's why I was like, what to talk to you? Because it's like, I feel like it's like, I don't even know how to navigate this new world.
You don't. And you just have to, and I have to tell you, it might go away.
Yes. Yes.
Why do you think?
Why do I think that it's going to go away? Because I think that a smaller body is going to fix the problem.
You got it! Oh my God, bingo! Bing, 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 bing. Doesn't even matter. Because at this point...
I actually meditated on that this morning.
You have to. You have to go in.
Because it was like, okay, what if? You know what I mean?
No, how is this? This will go away and want to lose weight.
And this feeling, this euphoria, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Be gone.
Yep, and it will. It will the moment you say...
I mean, that's life, right? But
yes.
You know what came to me was that, there would be loss and there would be a sadness because, like, it's incredible, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when I went inward, what came to me was that the gratitude of the last 9 days, I have never felt this my whole life. Like, I keep thinking that this is me. I've never felt like me. Or if I have, it was like when I was 4 years old.
I was 4. Mm-hmm.
But the gratitude that I have for the last 9 days, that's what's going to keep me from ever going on that diet again. There is nothing worth that hell.
Right?
Nothing.
Wouldn't you rather just, see, to me, it's worth dying. I'd rather die. I'd rather completely leave my body.
Yeah. Completely.
Yeah. I would rather be 500 pounds and not be able to walk.
Yeah.
I would rather, because at least you still have the openness of your mind and the existence and the connection to trees and birds and people, and you're open to, you're not closed off in a dark hole with nothing. A complete black hole void of nothing. Totally. That's hell. You were in purgatory.
Oh my God. Well, and like the other like scenario that like kind of popped into my head when I was walking was like, I felt like I was in this like box, right? You know what I mean? And like in my day-to-day life, right? And that like, because the place that I was is that like I was doing what I had to survive. And of course, I've been in that survival mode that you talk about for the last like 20 years, right? Fight or flight all the time.
You're totally sketchy, shifty-eyed animal.
Myself to like do things, and I'm talking about like grocery shop, stuff at kids' school, like really like push myself.
Yeah.
But like
sounds like depression.
Engagement, social interactions, like, and I felt like I was in a bunker, right? Like I was in.
Did you ever say to yourself, I'm an introvert?
Like I was taking fire like nobody's business, right? And that fire was my own barrage of, you're a piece of shit. You're a loser. Look, you don't know what you're doing. You're too fat to be there.
You're failure.
All the bullets were coming from me.
Yourself.
And then I go back in my bunker because it was safe.
Yeah.
Right?
So have you ever?
That's the dark, deep place.
Yeah, and you believe, you just assume everybody else believes the same way you do. You just make that assumption.
Be like, she got her shit together. She's an amazing person, kind and compassionate, and you know what I mean. And no, because my body, my self-image, and my body image were so intertwined, and that's what like that moment was like. You know, like when you have like a knotted nest of like necklaces, right? You're like trying to peel them apart. It was like my body image and my self-image were like independent.
Yes,
and I look at my body and be like,
oh, it has nothing to do with me.
And like, you know, you're a really amazing person. Do you know what I mean? Like, I could see my soul. I could see my soul. Like,
you just feel it. Yeah.
I am meant to be.
Yeah, and it's open.
When I came to this earth, you know.
Yeah, and separating it from the physicality of the body and the conditions, right? The conditions of the environment that's around you, the conditions of your home, the conditions of your lawn, you know, all the first world bullshit. It's really meaningless. It's like, it's insignificant. It's insignificant.
Completely. Well, and that was another thing that kind of came to me, was that I was like, you know, one of the things in my life is that like I could literally care less what kind of car I drive, right? Like, just, I'm not that kind of person that, like, I just don't care. Like, I have a minivan, like, you know, like, it has, you know, it's safe, like, you know what I mean? But, like, it's very practical, but, like, it's not, like, in the Mercedes or whatever. No. But it's like, why can't I view why can't I could care less about the kind of car I drive, right? It's just a vehicle. And it's kind of like, I'm the driver of that car. Like, my soul is the driver of this body, right? Like, the car is going to get changed out, right? And I could care less. And then there was something that you said that, the ego. And then it's like, my ego has been driving for a long ass time. And my soul finally pushed my ego into the back seat. Do you know what I mean? It's like, see you later. It's like my ego has been completely pushed aside.
Well, think of it this way. Your soul left the car, said, I'd rather walk.
Yeah.
I'd rather walk. I'd actually be okay sitting too. Okay, you want to cut my legs off? Okay, I'll lay down.
Yeah.
Okay, you just don't. You just die. You go into a form of death, is what that is.
It is. It's a death because I feel like reborn. You know what I mean? Like, it does feel like a death. You know?
Isn't it wonderful? It's the best thing I ever did.
I don't even, and that's why I just wanted, like, I really, like, more than, you know, getting, like, support or help or anything, I just wanted to relate to you because, like, you know, I know you know that you do meaningful work, but, you know, there are people that watch your videos that you don't necessarily have contact with, right? And I just wanted you to know that that it's impactful. Do you know what I mean? And that, like, you know, I know everything just lined up perfectly how it was supposed to be. But those, you know what I mean? Like, whatever series of videos I watched was like, holy crap. You know what I mean? Like, unbelievable.
You were in the right position. You were in the right place.
What I mean by that is that, like, not just my mindset, but, like, I can honestly say that, like, I've never in my adult life behaved this way. Like, you know, it was Cinco de Mayo, so my husband was like, hey, let's go get Mexican food, let's make margaritas. You know, before I'd be like, oh my God, there's too much sugar. I can't have alcohol because it'll make you sneeze, and I can't blah, 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 blah. Like, I'm, like, enjoying life. Like, the other day, I actually, like, cleaned my house on purpose, and no one was coming over. Do you know what I mean? Like,
you're feeling good. You're feeling energized.
I want to declutter. You know what I mean? Like, I want my environment to, like, reflect how I'm feeling. You know what I mean? It's insane. It's so crazy.
Yeah, and it's been there this whole time.
It's right there the entire time.
I know. So can you see why I believe this is a syndrome?
I know.
It's not a disease. It's a syndrome. Do you know what I mean? Have you read any of the stuff or heard where I talk about, I believe this is like a form of Stockholm syndrome or battered wife syndrome. That's how you come out of it so quick. Right. If it was a disease, you'd have a lot of conditioning that you'd still be battling in terms of conditioning. Plus, you would have to take some medication forever. So when you look at how you've responded and how I responded and how all the other people who have been here, who've experienced what you just experienced, it's like the moment you say, I'm done, and it's real, and it's coming from the heart, and you let yourself surrender and literally die and accept the body and everybody's opinion, and you just go into this willfulness, right? And you come out of it with this weird space. You're in this like, holy shit, how the trees, what? That's a tree! What's up with that?
Like, yeah. You know, and the other trigger was like, I know it's going to fix the exercise, right? I'm going to join the boot camp, and that's what that was the big.
You could see it transferring, right? Just shifting around.
Like, literally, every day, like I'm going for a walk, and it's not like, okay, because I'm not dieting, so I'm going to walk. It was truly in a place of, I want to move my body, and I want my face in the sun, and I want to go and walk on the trail. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, that's different.
Completely commune with, like, it's just, I feel like a weirdo. Like, I feel like somebody gave me a pill. I'm on, like, some kind of...
Yes.
It's great. I mean, it's amazing. And that's what you were saying, is that it's like, you know, I thought I was going to have to do, like, years and years and years. And I mean, I have done years and years of therapy, right? I mean, it's taken 20 years of dieting. You know what I mean? And I'm suffering. You know what I mean? Like, and I have to say that, like, you know, I had a moment of, like, deep loss the other day. Like, meaning that, like, I was going upstairs to get something, and something caught my eye, and it was this old journal, and I flipped it open, and it was from almost exactly 20 years ago, right? And it was, like, journaling, like, things, like, the truth that I am, like, living in right now. Like, I wrote them down 20 years ago, and I lost it. Like, I was so sad, and I was so, like, I started, like, to, like, really kind of beat myself up. I was like, your 26-year-old self freaking knew this. Freaking knew all of this. What is wrong with you? And then I stopped. And I was like, you know why? Because I needed to go through the last 20 years to figure this out, to feel it at the core of my being, every cell of my body. I had to go through this, and that's okay. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, I had deep compassion for myself. And, like, that never happened before.
And to have gratitude that it happened before you died. Like, some people have these shifts as they're dying.
Yeah.
Those are because they have to face it. And you had to face it because there was probably a part of your soul that was literally dying. And you could feel it. Even though physically your body was hanging on, your body could handle more, but you can just feel it. You can feel that. To me, it's like the Grim Reaper's calling. Grim Reaper's calling. And that's like, and that's what you're so afraid of, right? That's why, like, the Grim Reaper's calling. It's a weird feeling, and you don't know it until you face it. And you're like, oh, well, the Grim Reaper is your survival.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, the Grim Reaper is the loss of, you know, it's anything that you've attached your survival to. And you know what? Right. Why don't you invite that Grim Reaper in and let go of all that survival shit so you can just be free the rest of your life? You have your entire life to just exist in it, experience it, navigate. You have total autonomy. You have your free will. You have everything right now. What do you really need, Stephanie? What do you need right now?
Oh my God. Life experiences.
You need nothing. Well, you need nothing. You need nothing at the moment.
Like, I need
nothing.
Literally nothing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, breath in my lungs.
That's it. That's it. It's like, I'm conscious. If the body's conscious and it's functioning, why do I have to focus on it? Why do I have to sit here and go, oh my God, my stomach's too big? Why does that matter? Because the consciousness it's giving you, the awareness that it's provided is really all it's supposed to do.
Yeah. Well,
everything else is spontaneous.
You know what I mean? That, like, you know, like, I am still in this body, you know what I mean? And there are, you know, like, the thought, you know, the moment where I'm like, oh my God, my thighs are rubbing together. Do you know what I mean? And I had to stop myself and be like, you know what? Those thighs just walked you for an hour and a half without pain. Do you know what I mean? They were strong, no pain, and you got to experience nature with those thighs. And I did have a moment the other day where it was like almost an out of body experience where, like, I had to, like, it's gonna sound so weird, but, like, I went body part by body part. Do you know what I mean? It was just like, you know, every single body part had something that I hated and I loathed, and I
did you address every single one?
I went body part by body part, and, you know, thought about the things that are amazing about it, and then I apologized, and I asked for forgiveness.
I don't think that's weird. I think it's...
Like, this warm, and, like, I even grieved, like, this is insane. Like, I even grieved, like, my gallbladder. Like, I apologized to my gallbladder for the death of my gallbladder. The fact that it had to be removed because of all the freaking dieting and the low fat and the high fat and the low fat and the high fat. Like, I grieved and apologized and asked forgiveness from my gallbladder.
Yeah, because you didn't know what you were doing.
No, you know what I mean?
You didn't.
But it was like...
You were doing what you thought you were supposed to do.
You know what I mean? Of, like, I was able to see the good. You know what I mean? Like, the good of all those things I've been hating for so long. You know what I mean? So...
Well, and just that it's...
Yeah.
It's relieving to know it's none of your business.
Say that again?
I said it's relieving to know it's none of your business.
None of my business? Is that what you said?
Yeah. At this point.
Yeah.
You made it your business, and now you can step out and say, you know what, the physical aspects of this body are none of my business. If I need to go pee, I'll go pee. If I need to sleep, I'll sleep. If my legs are tired, I'll stop. I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to sit here and be all bitchy. You know, I'm here to experience life on this earth, which means it's an earthly experience, which means there's gravity, which means your legs are going to get tired, which means you're going to breathe hard because you have lungs, because we live in air. Right. You know, and the funny... Oh, yeah, it's like, why don't you just let it be? Let it be. And because if you look at all of that survival, I don't know, are you in that Patreon account?
Yeah, I just joined up this week.
Oh, so you probably have gotten in some good sessions, because now you're hearing... Now you're hearing the talks about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, survival mode, looking at this from an animal.
I'm gonna look him up and read some of his stuff.
Okay, so his first book is Power versus Force. You just need to know it's super heady.
Okay.
And so you might get through some of it and you can't even understand the first chapter. So go to the second chapter, see if you can understand that one, because a lot of times but he studied, I'm going to put it to my words, because he was a world-renowned psychiatrist who studied psychiatry. He wrote Orthomolecular Biology, which is groundbreaking science, neurochemistry. He also was a practicing Buddhist for over 20 years. He was also an atheist for 20 years. He was raised as a Christian, a very, very devout, I think he was a Episcopalian, devout Catholic Episcopalian. He actually went back into Christianity. And so his language, the language he uses to describe it is very sciencey, but blended with Buddhism and Christianity. So he talks a lot about God, and he talks a lot about, the void, which is very a Buddhist concept. And so what I've tried to do is really study, because he's the only person that has really captured what you just went through, what I've gone through. And it explained these states of consciousness. And so if I were to describe what it is, he's basically describing survival mechanisms and how our behavior works in survival mode, and how we work where we're no longer in survival mode, when we are up into these higher states of consciousness where our brain activity changes, where our perceptions are very different, how we process information, just everything change. Our entire brain function changes when we come out of those lower states of survival or lower states of consciousness. And what I love about his work is he's so don't judge that lower level. Don't judge it. Yeah. We are meant to be that way. That took millennia of evolution to have that narcissistic mechanism. That mechanism is why you're still here. So he's like, don't criticize that an aspect of you that will never go away. You cannot get rid of that ancient area of the brain that is highly sensitive to fear, to perceived threat. So how you respond in that lower level of consciousness, he's basically divided into two. Below fear is flight, hiding, and shrinking. Which is really a mark or sign that you feel incapable, that you feel weak, that you feel inadequate. So you're more likely, and you feel like a failure. You feel that it is defining you as a bad person. I'm hiding and I'm a bad person. I can't handle it. You go down into this really dark area of shame, apathy.
Yeah.
It's hopeless,
Oh, yeah.
and you, but you're yet still a victim because everything is the environment's too much for me. So you're still in that narcissism of, expectations are different and loss and poor me, and you're still kind of hiding. Whereas when you come up to those upper states of the lower survival mechanisms, the lower states, you're at least you have a little bit more confidence in yourself, so you're willing to face some of the fears. However, because it's not self-confidence, it's usually you're willing to face the fear and confidence because you have a tool or mechanism that you think. So you become you go into a state of desire. I want that. If I get that, ooh, I can, if I have bigger lips, if I have bigger boobs, if I can lose some weight, if I can buy that car, if I can get more education, if I read more self-help books, if I study, if I listen to another blogger, if I get rid of gluten, you're in that lower state of desire, which is actually somewhat better than the hiding because you have the energy and confidence to know it is reachable. I can do this, right? But you're still dependent. It's not intrinsic. Really? You're still surviving, seeking what I would call a weapon, right? I can survive if I have these weapons. Right? The lower states of hiding are, I can't survive because I don't have any weapons. My weapons are gone, right? It's always codependency in that. I'm the victim, and then you come up a little higher, which means you're energized. At least you're energized, but you're starting to have like the pride in that. Look at me, I have a weapon. Look, I did, I got it, I'm thin. And so now the pride in the inflated state begins. So you're inflating your sense of survival beyond what it really actually is because you're dependent on a weapon. So if you get rid of that weapon, what do you think happens to your state of consciousness? All of a sudden you go into hiding.
Right.
Yeah, so those lower states of consciousness below 200 and fear is a big marker because how you respond to the fear is either in hiding, which is poor me, I don't have a weapon, or desire, inflation, which is I have a weapon. Anger is like I'm gonna manipulate you into doing so you're energized. Pride is a big one. Our culture is major into pride. That's where the benefit is I'm working hard, but it's a trap. You become trapped because now you have to constantly work. You can't stop working. Now you're a slave. You're a slave to your own survival. And eventually you're going to fatigue. And eventually and that's where people on that lower scale of survival mode can go. They can move up the scale, but they're really sensitive to shooting right down to the bottom in shame because you're a moment away. You're a moment away from losing your job. Right, because you're...
and kind of to your point is that, I had a moment where, the peace came in with that, detaching from data. And what I mean by that is the number on the scale or, the number in your bank account or, the source of superiority, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where that's how I feel better about myself is those external things. And, I was like, oh, Mother's Day is coming up. And you know what? Oh, I love gadgety kind of stuff. And I was like, yeah, let's get a Fitbit. Yeah. And then I stopped myself. Because
why would I need that?
No data. Because it's going to become the step data is going to be good, bad.
Well, the goal is that it's totally indifferent. Why does it matter?
Yeah.
What does it matter? Even
that's the point. Is that I am in this place where it's like, who freaking cares? Right now, I am walking until I am done walking. Doesn't matter how long. Doesn't matter how many steps.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. So you're not glamorizing it, and so that aspect of. So the whole concept of a Fitbit is it's basically giving you information, and that information is symbolized, right? You're symbolizing that means I'm better, I'm fitter. It's a symbol that my body is getting better, I'm improving. And you know what? Let's not judge it. That would make a whole lot of sense for someone who's in those lower states of survival. Maybe in the, they're at least in the desire, they're above apathy, they're above fear because they have a mechanism to make them feel like they can deal, So what happens is when you're willing to lay down all the weapons and you have no sense of strength, power, or competence, and you're willing, the willingness to face loss, failure, people rejecting you. When you face that primal, you're gonna die feeling with nothing, with no weapons but your humility to say, you know what, if this is gonna kill me, I will allow it to kill me because I can no longer fight with my energy. I'm done hiding. I'm done fighting. I just want to live. And if I'm not meant to be alive, I have to allow myself to die. And once you're willing to do that, that courage it takes to just face the truth, whatever it is, whether it's a horror story and you die, or whether it's bliss, doesn't matter. You don't know what's on the other side. When you decided to let this go, you didn't know what was over there. You had no idea. The willingness to do that essentially inherently is self-reliance. So all of a sudden, you're willing to face the call of death. You're by yourself with nothing, with no religious dogma, with no you're just buck-ass naked and weak.
And nobody's telling me what to do, and no external thing is telling me what to do. It's like in those moments where the reason I was hiding is because I didn't think I could handle whatever was outside.
You got it. Okay, pause right there. Pause right there. Pause. Yeah. I did not think I could handle it. That right there is what holds people in depression. They hold themselves below the fear mark, and they go down into hiding and shrinking. Those are the lowest states of consciousness, theory. That's where suicide, that's where drug addiction, that's where all sorts of, because you're just trying to make something out of your black life, your dark, black out life. The willingness, even though you don't have any sense of capacity, you really don't think you can handle it, the willingness to experience it, even if you can't, is in effect the courage it takes to push you out of survival mode. All of a sudden you're like, it didn't do anything, and I just, and was it that bad? And it's not. It's almost like, I'm gonna try to recall what it was for me when I kind of walked through that veil. I didn't even know I'd walked through it. I just got up, took a shower, and went on campus. And however it had affected me, and it was choice. There was a lot of choice in what I did in that out-of-body experience. There was a lot of, because you had to make a choice. It was a choice for you. You had to sit there and look at, can I be this back forever? Can I have this body forever? Can I be without two legs permanently? And you had to say yes to everything that came to you. Yes. You have to face it. Yes, my gallbladder. Yes. You have to say yes to everything that comes up, even if you don't feel like you can handle it. You just have to surrender, failure, and not judge it. And just say, in terms of the way it is, everything I've been running away from, hiding from, shrinking away from, denying, repressing, blaming, fighting, being angry over, I'm surrendering to it all. That right there is death. That's what that is.
And the self-reliance and the trust of yourself that you can handle anything. Like taking a moment, because I had moments where I'm like, pause, breathe.
You have to be willing to die.
You know what I mean?
You have to be willing to die. You have to be willing to just not exist anymore. And that's another thing I had to go through too, is I might not exist. There may be nothing. Well, you know what? That nothing, if that is the truth and that's what's chasing me, if that's what the Grim Reaper is, I'm done. I am willfully handing over my soul. My entire existence is going to be crushed and blown away. And that willingness to do that, I remember getting up, kind of going and taking a shower and getting dressed, and then going onto campus. And I literally could feel this. First of all, I could feel the trees. They were glowing. I was walking around campus, and I remember all of a sudden I felt this just intense amount of love towards people I didn't know. And it was like I was levitating. Like I'm levitating. I didn't even know I'm telling you in hindsight with context. It was just this peaceful space of ease and willfulness. And I lived in that space for 2 years.
Wow.
Until I got pregnant, and then I had kids. And then all of a sudden I go back into my animal survival brain. I'm like, holy shit, okay, now how do I function with this?
Yeah.
Now how do I function with as a mother that has this weird instinct? I remember there was a big shift when, wasn't with pregnancy, it was actually when my daughter was born, and I had this baby, and it was like, oh shit. I was like, oh my God, now I have to, how am I? Well, and she could die, and now I'm attached to that life, and I have to be willing to surrender her life. I have to willing for this child to die for me to stay in that space. That conflicts with my wiring to keep her alive, you know? So, again, I'm telling you in hindsight with context. This wasn't going on in my head at the time. I didn't have context to understand it. And so now they're in their teens, and she's going to go to college in a year, and I am still living in that state, right? But I'm definitely rooted in the realness of my animal self. Right. And so I love where Dr. Hawkins says, and this is scripture, I think, too, wear it loosely. You can live in this world. You can live in this being conformed and speaking the language of where you live. Just don't become it. Never again. Well, you might. It just depends on what you need to learn still. Attach who you are to something small, limited, lacking, separating you from others. Why would you do that? That's, you're going to suffer. And you know what? And if it does happen, it's because there is still something, a visual, if you want to think of it this way, is you go into this space where you're floating and it's free, right? And there's part of your brain and part of our wiring that wants you to go into rigidity. Because it feels safe. Because it feels like defense, and you kind of back yourself up, and you have a position, right? This and that, me and them. And you need to start recognizing when that happens, and then you release it as it shows up. So I've learned over the course of 20 years to, as something arises, I deal with it then and there, and then it goes away. So even just a thought or a fear, you know, I remember doing this when I wrote Weight Loss Apocalypse, because I wanted to stay very clear around the intention and the integrity of the book. And I remember thinking, I'm just going to express my awareness at this from this point of view, and someone doesn't like it, that's okay. So I accepted people's not liking it. I accepted I wasn't going to make any money. I accepted all those things so that I just didn't have any attachments to it, so that it gave me freedom in that to write it. And I still don't care what people think about it. I still, even when someone goes, God, Robin, I love that book, I'm like, great.
It's different. And that's the same process. That's what's so, amazing about this, right? It's the same process.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to explain to you. It's like I learned to just live in this space, which is really just allowing me to be free, because I'm not afraid to die. Once again, that animal brain is wired to protect you from death. So all those defense mechanisms, all those needing to latch onto a weapon, come from, number one, the threat that you're going to die, and two, the idea that you can't handle it. There's two parts. The threat I'm going to die, and two, I can't handle it. So one, I'm not afraid to die, and I can handle that. I can handle dying. I can handle someone chopping my legs off. I can handle someone saying, we're going to cut your neck off. Okay. I would go into this space. I would go into that space that you just came out of, and I would lean into it. I would willfully surrender the body. You can have it. Because I probably disengaged before it even happens. Who knows? And then the body's gone, and I'm disengaged. Whoop-de-fucking-do.
Exactly.
I've had to go through this with my children in my head. It's going to sound really weird, but they're going to get murdered in front of my face. They're going to get raped. They're going to get murdered. That's the worst case scenario, right? And I have to be willfully okay, knowing if I can't do anything about it, to allow it to happen and forgive myself and detach myself from that. Completely. What that allows me is total freedom with my children. To let them be themselves and to give them the autonomy they need to develop that sense of capacity within themselves without needing a weapon. I don't want to hand them a weapon and say, you can't handle it. Here's a religion. You can't handle it. You need to you need to have more vitamins and minerals. You know, you can't handle it. You need to get better grades. I'm not going to do that.
Wow, that's an amazing. I'll have to go through that. I'll have to go through that thinking process because that's the next level. Like, you know what I mean? That like, this leads into with my kids. You know, you kind of like I'm a stay-at-home mom, right? Like, I don't have the promotions. I don't have the numbers on the scale now. I don't like, you know, I do all this effort and I don't have any. You know what I mean? Like, what they do is not a reflection of me, right?
Not at all. It's a reflection of them.
Right? But like, I can see we're going through this mind space of the death, right? Of like handling that and how would you, yeah.
Well, and the balance between integrating them into what our culture is.
Right.
Okay. But keeping it loose so they know that this is just programming.
Yeah.
If you go to a different country or a different part of our country, they're gonna have different programs in place, and people think it's real. And they actually think that you suck and they're better than you. And you can let them have that. You do suck and they are better than you.
Well, and that's exactly what this feels like. It's like a deprogramming.
Oh, it is.
Like,
yes, it is a deprogramming. And the goal is I'm not handing you a new program. I don't want to hand you a new program.
Yeah.
You just, right?
No.
So that's why you feel the way you do, because there's no program in its place. You're just existing. It's like natural. I'm not telling you what to do. I didn't tell you what to do.
When I wanted the box and the rules and tell me what to do and I'll just do it. That was my life. That was exactly.
That's because you were in that hiding lower. You were like below that point in fear where you felt completely incapable and you needed. Plus, you probably felt paralyzed by the fact that you were failing with whatever weapon you were choosing, anyways.
I was totally paralyzed. I mean, that was the language I used was like, I'm stuck and I'm signing up for this self-love course so I can get unstuck, right?
Okay, here's a great book by Dr. Hawkins.
Yeah.
Because if you start with Power versus Force and go to Eye to the Eye and the Eye, and it's that is so heady. It is so clinical. I really liked his last book before he died, and it's called there's Healing and Recovery, where he talks about physical healing. That one, it's called, why am I spacing this? Letting Go. No, it's called Letting Go. Letting Go.
That's a good name. Okay.
It is, and this was his last book, and I felt like the parts that I've read, I'm like, okay, so he probably had a writer write for him, because it definitely comes across a little smoother. Or his wife wrote it. Susan might have written it with him, because he's very much involved. But this is such an easier read, and he really just puts it like it is in language that is, to me. So when someone asks what should I read, I just go read Letting Go by Dr. Hawkins. I don't tell them to read Power versus Force. I've done that, and people become they become paralyzed, going, what? This is a lot of information, and it's too much information. He's going into kinesiology and muscle testing, and not everybody. It's like, what?
Yeah. Well, but all that goes down to that trusting yourself. You know what I mean? Your inner voice. You know. Yeah.
I mean, I've read Power versus Force 3 times, and I will tell you, the third time, I'm really connecting much deeper. There's certain chapters I actually understand. I didn't understand the first time around. But I study him. I study his work because I believe that he is so beyond his ability to express this and study it, and his scientific mind and his Buddhist mind and his Christian mind and all those things that are really helping contextualize this from what I love, that intellectual part of it, like looking at it from survival mode and not ego and not judgment. You're an animal. These are mechanisms that served a purpose, and you can have gratitude for those mechanisms. But you know what? If there really is no need, why live there?
Right.
You know, and see, and what you're coming to realize is I needed to live there to transcend it. I have to go through it and then surrender the pride, which is the higher end of that lower part. You know, if you look at the scale of consciousness or the map of consciousness.
Right.
190, pride. That's the inflated concept of yourself and your survival with your weapons. It's like the United States with all of our weaponry and our military. We're like, we're huge. Yeah, with all of it. Clearly we have we're compensating for something.
Yeah.
Right? It's the same thing. It's like, it's a very energized, very, at that, your self-care, you have all that you do. It's a positive place to be in the negative zone, if it makes sense. But it has a huge downside, and people that live at 190 are quite dangerous because they're thriving in their narcissism. I'm superior, you're inferior, I'm better than you, you suck. Yeah. There's tons of divisions. There's tons of, it's abusive. It's a trap.
Yeah.
If you look at like religious cults, that's usually where they sit. Yeah, there is a sense of pride. Which you can say the upside is the amount of work you put into it. The amount of dedication. You dedicate your entire identity to that shit. Yeah. Thin supremacy. You live, so you could say you slid up and down that scale many times. Anytime you were on a diet, you were in desire, which is above hiding, because you had a tool. I have a diet. I have a diet in my back pocket. Now I have. And I'm doing great, and I'm in desire, and now I'm in this but then you're feeling deprived. And all of a sudden you're pissed off and you're angry and you're like, I deserve my food. And now you're getting your food, and now you're in shame. I suck. I failed. Now you're in your lower. I mean, it's just vicious cycle between the high and low and high and low and high and low. And it's a trap. The only way to get out is to surrender your weapons. You have to surrender it all. And if you can surrender it all right now, if you've surrendered that one, which was a big one, surrender it all if you can. Every single one. And you basically go down, well, what's the truth? What is the truth? What's the truth within me? And the truth is that it is what it is. And I'm willfully going to allow whatever that is spontaneously happen, because I don't really know what's going on anyways. So my kindness isn't even my kindness. It's kindness.
It is so crazy for me to wrap my brain around this, because my thinking was the antithesis of it. Do you know what I mean? Just completely control.
So now are you hearing me going, yes, this makes sense. Yes. Holy shit.
Yeah. Because at first, you know what I mean? When I first started, some of the terms weren't resonating with me, and I didn't understand it, but
now you're getting it. Yeah. So I always tell people, I'm like, when you're on that other side, I look so smart, don't I?
Well, and to be honest,
now you're over here, you're like, no, duh, she's just telling it like it is.
I feel very alien. Do you know what I mean? I feel very oh my God, I feel I feel very comforted that you understand this. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're not crazy. You're not crazy.
Yeah.
No, it's different. And Maslow, when I study Maslow's hierarchy of needs, he's another scientist. And I'm like, oh, he had to have been there. He had to have been here to know this. Because he breaks it down into a pyramid. Right. The foundation of our psyche is to get what we can. Well, it's food and water.
Yeah.
And then the next level up is shelter, environmental safety. The third level is, and these are all survival needs, right? And so the third level is our need to feel lovable. Right. And because it's a tribal need, because our survival has evolved as pack animals to want to feel safe and secure with other people. That's the biggest issue. So in my mind, I'm like, well, David Hawkins is basically talking about these survival needs in terms of our human need to be a pack animal. Right. He's not talking about food and water survival mechanisms. Right. That's what the eating disorder is. That to me is oh, clearly we have a whole, why are you so, because your weapon is dieting and you're triggering your animal instincts, which means you're going to binge. Yeah. Right. So what Dr. Hawkins was looking at is it's almost like that third hierarchy of need and how we relate to others and how we perceive ourselves. Are we lovable? Right. Are we good enough? So we're trying to transcend that third hierarchy of need, which pushes you up into what Maslow calls self-confidence. Right. Now you I'm putting together Maslow's hierarchy of needs and Dr. Hawkins' scale of consciousness going, self-confidence, self-reliance, self-navigation, and then he goes up in these higher states of bliss and self-actualization.
Right, self-actualization. Yeah.
Yep. And I'm like, okay. So basically, you could say you are now actualized.
Yeah.
And the scientists study like behavior changes. Maslow talked about how when you're below, when you're in these phases, you become controlling. It's part of just like you're trying to balance out your brain chemistry, really, between, this inflammation that's saying do something, and actually getting freedom from that feeling. You want freedom from that feeling, and what you're doing is really normal. It's not something to be judged. You wanting to diet was you trying to feel better about that trigger, right? You just never questioned that the thin ideology is a problem. Never, ever. So your behavior, if you look at it, is so forgivable and understandable.
And I'm a very loving, compassionate, kind person. And in my mind, don't think that I am better than anyone else. But like all those behaviors, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. Is like maneuver myself in a position to where I feel better than someone else.
Or just to feel better. Just to feel better about yourself, but you're still holding yourself to some concept that is, even if it doesn't have anything to do with someone else, it has to do with your placement in wanting to feel superior within yourself. Correct. Yeah. But Maslow's hierarchy of needs is fascinating to me because his kind of mimic Dr. Hawkins, but Dr. Hawkins is super explanatory. He explains this on such a different level.
Check that out. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. And you can go up, and there's people that have gone up into enlightenment or up into, 500s or, and lost it. Because they get attached to the glamour, the benefits they get. The attraction. You got it. They don't even know it's occurring, and they're attaching to the fact that they're a guru, that they have the money, and they have the success, and people are following them. Look at all my followers. They don't even know that it's happening.
Well, and then that's the thing, right? Is that we are like a soul having a human experience, and that ego is that piece, right?
You got it.
So, like, God.
Yeah. So, I intentionally don't, when I get an email like yours, which is like, oh my God, I so connect at the heart level. Like, I so get it. But I don't take ownership of it. Yeah. It's not, I don't take ownership of it. I had nothing to do with it. I don't, can you see why?
Yeah. And I just wanted to share the love gratitude with you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you said, keeping separate and not inflating your ego.
No, I don't want it. I'd rather die than to get off on your success.
Well, and I know you're working on another book. I need you to there are things in life that are hard. You know what I mean? And it makes I don't know. It just it's got it. Sometimes you need your tank refilled. You know what I mean? And I just wanted you to know that it was the flame, the spark, you know what I mean? It's just incredible. Well, and that's because it's just been 9 days, you know what I mean? Just figuring this stuff out. And so, the only piece, because, this all started with dieting and food, right? Is I don't have a lot of experience with the hunger scale, nor do I have a lot of information, you know what I mean? I have your book, I need to crack that back open. Does that go into the hunger scale? I've just been doing my best to be you know what? Let's eat a little, eat what sounds good. It's it tastes amazing.
Yeah,
that's hungry, eat, you know what I mean? I don't know if I need any more rules than that.
No, you don't. You don't. That's it. That's it. You're doing a good job. You're doing exactly as you don't need to read the book. I don't know if I would read Weight Loss Apocalypse. The hunger scale is awesome.
Yeah.
But
so do you have any advice infancy of navigating this recovery?
Start well, because you do kind of have to re-engage with the body's mechanisms. It's kind of like, how do I learn to pee on the toilet when I've been peeing in a diaper for years? So you need to be okay overeating. You need to be okay undereating and figuring it out. And you'll find there's a space where it's I'm hungry enough, I want to eat. And then as soon as I'm not hungry anymore, I want to do something else. I don't want to fixate on it. But while you're eating, it's enjoy it. Taste it. You
know.
Oh
my God. I just never, like, I really, like, feel like, you know, like, I was, you know, because I've just, like, filled an entire notebook. I just am, like, writing and writing and writing and writing. And it was just, like, I really feel like that alien is like, oh, my God, on my planet, we can't have you. Or dairy.
Or any starches.
This is so good. You know, like, that first day, I was just like, I'm going to get up and make me a cup of coffee. And I'm going to put some milk in it.
It's so fun. And you don't have to feel bad or fearful or be worried about it because you can rely on the body to say, yeah, you're good. Stop drinking it.
To be like, I'm like, ooh, that tasted too sweet. I'm going to have to back off. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and not be like, oh my God, I'm on a diet because I have to back off on the sweet. No, it doesn't. It's too sweet.
No, it's just like, just back off.
Totally.
So,
oh, this is exciting. Well,
yay.
I'm excited for you. Congratulations. Just be gracious if you find that you're going back down, and that's okay.
Yeah.
You just have to go into that radical truth and say, tell yourself the truth. What are you afraid of? I'm afraid he's going to leave me. Well, then go into him leaving you.
Right.
Why hide from it anymore? And you know what? Can you handle it? We don't know. Why don't you find out? Why do you got to sit here and say no when you don't know yet?
Right. Well, and like the latest one, like I haven't like taken the time to go into is like, what if my body was 105 pounds right now?
Oh yeah, you do need to go into not caring.
What does that feel like? Does that make me vulnerable? Do you think like it makes me go into those places?
Yeah.
The reason for the weight too, right?
Yep, you got it. You got to be able to not care about all of it. Well, what if you go down to 105 pounds and regain 50 of it? For who knows why, but, you know.
God knows I got a closet. I'm just going to keep all the clothes, and I got, I can, you know, just buy what I fit. You know,
first world problems.
Really, it becomes so matter of fact, and it's so insane about how, like, it becomes so matter of fact.
Yeah, it's easy.
When the emotion and the meaning.
It's all gone.
You know?
You got it. You got it. And the only way to do that is to surrender it all, and it feels like death to do it.
Surrender. It does. Surrender and death.
You got it. And really opening yourself up to what is life and what is life about, and what do you really need from the body? What do you really need from the body? Because your body, you are not the body, so that came to you. And the next thing is, what do I really need from this body?
Right.
It's conscious. You're aware.
Right.
And here you go. You're good to go.
Yeah.
So all the rest is just benefit.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know how you do, January 1st, you gotta have the, like, you know, gonna go on a diet or whatever. But, like, I was just like, I just want joy. I don't know how I'm gonna get it, but I just want joy. And that's what I'm feeling right now. Just, like, intense, like, joy, you know?
Isn't it beautiful? It's so much nicer, isn't it, than being thin and self-righteous?
Oh, God.
Right?
Unbelievable.
I know, it's amazing. It's amazing too that you didn't even know this existed. So that's another block people have, is they think they need to know what this is to reach it and get it. Right. You can't get it that route because that's dependent. That's forceful. You have to surrender and it shows up.
Right.
You have to have courage and then whoop.
And you never know, like, how many iterations and cycles and circles, and you just don't know until it happens.
Until it happens. You got it. You got it. That's the truth. Yeah. It's like took me close to suicide to open myself up to anything, to being desperate, hands and knees, crawling, palms up to God to say what thy will be happening, and I'm going to let it happen. And if it means that I'm dying, I will surrender this soul forever. I'm done. Yeah. What did it take to do that? Pretty much misery, pretty much a lot of darkness and hell and self. It's all in my own. It's like, I don't know how to explain it other than you're holding yourself hostage. There's no one doing it. You're the one sitting in that cage. The door has been open this whole time. You refuse to leave because you were so prideful in that cage. Because you're going to survive in that cage. Well, eventually you see that you're going to die in that cage, and if you want to live, you might want to leave. And and you don't know what's out there. It could kill you as soon as you leave. And you know what? It's like jumping off a cliff where there's a cloud covering it. You can either stay where you're at and die a wretched death, or you can jump off the cliff and let whatever happens. And you know what I did? I jumped and there was nothing there. It was like solid ground. I was like, are you shitting me? I almost shot myself in the head because I thought I was going to fall to my death.
I know.
And then you become aware, right? You become aware that was an illusion, and you.
It's just like, it's just like the lid is off the box. You know what I mean? Like.
Well, it's like a spotlight. I've heard someone else say it's like turning on a spotlight.
I mean, it didn't literally happen this way, but like explaining it now, it's almost like somebody opened the box and was like, oh, like the angels singing.
Yes.
And it's kind of like, are you kidding me? Like, this is all.
All I had to do is push the top off the box. Yes.
I had the key to hold on, you know? God, bless America.
It's true. It's true. So there was one woman who described she had a an out-of-body death experience. She died and came back. And her way of explaining this was, it's like someone put a spotlight on everything. And so I could see everything. And then I came back and it was like, you'll never forget that. Even though I'm still looking at life through like a, what's it called? Like a spotlight or what's the word? I'm looking at it through one spotlight focus. I know what the whole room looks like. I'll never forget that awareness. Even though right now I'm just seeing what the light is on. I will never forget that awareness. And it's hard. It's like so many people are like, oh, anytime someone says, yeah, I had an eating disorder. I have an eating disorder and I've recently relapsed. It's like, oh, you never really recovered.
Yeah.
It makes sense. It's not as a put down. It's like, oh, you were just managing it. Like, you were still in your.
You'll know it, like when you're there. Yeah, like I know exactly because it's been so much effort and so much turmoil and so much. You know what I mean? Like when you get your head above the water that one time, before you get pulled back under.
You got it. And when you learn to float on your back, you're like, oh, I'll never work that hard again. Why would you do all that when you can just float on your back?
Exactly. Well, and that's what it feels like. I've been walking around without my contacts in. Do you know what I mean? Like everything's all blurry, fuzzy, and it's like so I put my contacts in. Do you know what I mean? Like everything is crisp and clear.
Yeah, and you'll never forget. And so it's kind of hard to. It's like knowing what you know now. Why would you go back into wanting to be thin? What is worth all of that?
I mean, and it's like nothing. And I mean, this, and I get, like, I accepted the fact, like, I really have just been, like, meditating on the fact that, this because tomorrow I could wake up and this is gone. But, like, this feeling is not, like, reaching a certain goal or what, you know what I mean? Like, that like, self-inflated, like, this feeling.
You've done nothing. You do nothing.
Takes my soul at a different level and never. Well, and that's what I think I saw, like, one of your videos, because, like, I was just watching the ones on YouTube, right? And the ones that were coming up were the older ones, you know what I mean, that are full length. And then, the most recent ones are the shorter ones. But the ones that were coming up, and it was somebody that had, like, kind of this, it was an older video, and it was somebody that I think had gotten to this place, and you were talking about, like, going on to HCG for, like, the hormonal fix, and I was like, oh, no. I can't. No.
And I am, and to me, it is like, you shouldn't. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. It's not worth the fantasy of thinking.
There was some psychological, like, some reason that you had to test it, but I'm like, no, like, this feeling right now, like, there's no way. There's just literally no way.
Yeah.
No way.
Well, and so, because you don't really have any problems. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like, so I have a client, let's just say they're in their 400-pound range.
Yeah, well, right.
So, but the goal is to get them here.
Completely.
To where, right? And then what you do is
this. That's a good point. Is that the reason for, like, like after I lost the 65 pounds, and I started this, like, the first trigger was that, like, I was pre-diabetic, like, 5.8 or whatever that number is, right? And then after losing 65 pounds and having no flour and sugar, do you know what I mean? Like 1 ounce of a grain every day, I was still 5.8, right?
Yeah, that's stress induced.
Like, well, then what was all this for? You know?
That was all this for. Well, because
that was the reason this right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw that article that I need to like look into it a little more about the whole diabetes fight or flight.
Oh yeah, that's old shit. That's not new science. It's old.
You know,
it's relevant.
You know, I took care of my mom for the last 5 years of her life, and she was literally she died from all the complications of diabetes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Eventually kidney failure, and she had every single one of the complications. And just, I mean, you can see the reason why I was motivated to diet, right? I mean, you can see, like, it was a pure, well, it was fear, honestly. You know what I mean? That's what the motivation was. But yeah, to be out of the fight or flight.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
Well, you just have to accept diabetes. Just accept it.
That's exactly. And that's a hard one, right?
No, not for me. No, are you kidding me? I'd rather have diabetes.
I really have to wrap my brain around is that, like, the impact that it had on me as her caretaker.
Yeah.
To my kids.
Okay, hold on a second. You're projecting your criticism onto your kids. You criticized her. There was definitely criticism. So there's your pride. There's the pride, and that's why you've been held hostage to your own goddamn narcissism.
Exactly.
So
then it's back to your whole exercise of going through your kid's death. I have to go through that exercise of, okay, I have diabetes.
And they're going to judge you. Don't forget. And they're going to judge you. And they're going to say, she's lazy. So you have to question, are you willing to go back into hell for them?
Yeah.
No.
I got to go into that.
See, so you need to separate yourself from other people you care about. Because you were ignorant.
Yeah. Completely.
But you were, in your head, you were smart. Better.
Oh, I came from a high tower.
Yes,
right?
Yes. And that's probably why you held yourself hostage so intensely, too. Because you are so shameful against your mother that you ended up with that same shame. Karma's a bitch, isn't it?
Magnified, right? Right?
Now you know.
Because then there's guilt and shame.
Oh, you're such a pathetic person. I know. See, it's all like, all of a sudden you're like, oh, karma. That was my karma. I needed to go into that space to realize that it's so forgivable. And it's not what you thought. And your mother wasn't what you made her out to be.
Right.
It was way more than that. It was way more involved than that.
Well, and, you know, the clarity that I've gotten here is that she was doing the best that she could. You know what I mean?
Oh, totally.
Yeah. I mean, you know, like, because of all this thing that I've done. Well, if you did this time,
oh, yeah. So you're projecting your religion onto her as if dieting's going to make it better, when in reality you could say, well, the fact that she lived deprived probably is why she needed to compensate herself with food. And the fact that she's in that state of mind, she's in a perpetual state of fight or flight, which means her blood sugar's high just by sitting in fear.
That's what pisses me so. That's what really ticks me off. Is that, like, just the state that she and I both have been in, that in and of itself has been that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it exacerbates it, you know.
In the fight or flight, because I know,
So forgive yourself and forgive diabetes. Because it's honestly, is it worthy of that type of shame?
You know what I mean? If I never continue to rise, I'm going to have to deal with it. And that's the one that I'm going to really have to sink into. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because maybe this body is not meant to be that old.
Well, and I have to tell you, in that same vein, like, I had, you know, like, one of those, like, really, like, intense, like, aha moments. Like, I just felt like stuff was being downloaded into my brain, you know, just running. And then I had a fear bubble. Like, I could even, like, almost choke the air in my throat. And I thought, oh, my God. My soul may have just learned the lesson that I came here to learn, and I'm going to die. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
What's going to happen? I'm going to get rid of my car, right?
You got it. I was going to say, you're going to die in the next 2 weeks now.
No, but it is, right? Like,
you got it. So let it happen. At least enjoy your next 2 weeks. Yeah. Okay, I hate to do this, but I got to go. I have another client at the hour.
What's that?
I have someone right now.
Okay.
Waiting for me. I'm
just... How do I pay you and all that good stuff?
Well, let me text her right now and just let her know I'm running a little behind. Can you hold on a second? Just give me a second.
Sure.
Because she's pretty flexible.
Okay.
I'm so excited for you.
It's been amazing to connect with you because I really feel like in this new land, and I just appreciate you understanding. You know what I mean?
I don't know if I understand it very well. I'm still trying to.
Right?
Yeah, I'm still trying.
Because it's not, you know what I mean? But it's like a level of consciousness is the only thing, right?
Well, it's like new too for you because you haven't. Yeah, so it is kind of like being a baby because this is a different way of existing, and it's not like anything's changed. You're still on the same planet. You still have the same sun that rises and sets. It's the same environment, the same culture, same everything. Nothing has changed. Same husband, same children, same school, same home, same dog, same. And it's going to come and it's going to go. And now you're in a position to actually live in it and exist in it and to be present with it all. Present with your dog dying, present with your husband. Your husband's going to leave you. You know, just any scenario is going to happen and you have to be open. And that is like anti-human nature.
Exactly what we're programmed to think.
Yeah. Well, and what it does, and this is what Dr. Hawkins talks about, is when you transcend that fear and lacking level, and you come up into, courage and acceptance and neutrality and lovingness, and you go up, your whole existence does continue to evolve, and it can go back down into an unevolved state as soon as you hold on to something or need something and it's attached to some type of survival, and then you realize it and you let it go and you come back up. It's like your buoyancy floats up, like the water level rises. So your buoyancy is going, and
that's a good way to look at
it. And whatever you have to learn, you still have to learn it. So I don't have to sit here and prove it. And that's the other thing I remember realizing. There's no point to reading a self-help book. There's no point.
Oh my God.
Because I won't know until I know something. Why am I forcing a knowingness when whatever karma needs to be served, whatever lesson I have to figure out, it'll happen naturally. I can't force a knowing of something. And I think sometimes people get caught up in this process thinking, I have to know it. I want what someone's going to listen to this and they're going to say,
what did you do?
Yes, I want to read that book. I want to read that book. I want to listen to these videos. And they're not realizing they have to actually go inside. They have to accept, this is hard to describe, but they have to accept their misery. They have to go into the misery. They don't, instead of trying to escape it, they have to actually go inside of it and ask questions. What is it? What is it that is so you could get rid of it? If you could, I don't know, you have to go inside and go into, so many people would say, if I could get rid of my body fat, if I could be thinner, well, that's going outside of yourself. Get rid of anything external. Get rid of all external things and go into what you were, basically what you connected to, which is no more dieting. Then I have to stay fat. You have to stay fat. Then people won't love me. People won't love you. You just have to say yes to every single thing until you're at, I will die. Yes, you will die.
Yeah.
And then all of
worst case scenario,
it's going to come up. Yeah, and it comes up on its own. Well, no one will love me. I'll be alone forever. My husband will leave me. My parents will think I'm a piece of shit. I'll be homeless. You just have to go into, can you handle that? Can you handle that? One thing I remember is it, which is worse, suffering or pain? The pain of what you're afraid of or doing what you're doing? Because usually if you come to a place where you're like, well, the suffering is better than that pain, well, you probably should then sit right there for a little bit and stay in the misery.
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of people get to a point in this process where like, Robin, I am so miserable in my pain and anguish over having to gain weight that it actually seems better to go back into the hellhole of the cage. And
to be able to catch your breath.
I'm like, go back on a diet. Go back.
I know, right? Yeah, you got to take one more cycle.
Yeah, you see what I mean? I'm like, I'm not gonna judge that.
And it sounds great, but now watching it, you know what I mean? It's like it's so clear. You know what I mean? But when you're in it is not.
No. No, and that's why it's like, all right, you should go back on the protocol, or you should go back onto a ketogenic diet. You should do that. I know they're gonna fail at it. They don't.
And you'll be right there.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm like, let me know. You know, I'm okay with this. There's no problems here.
Well,
I think you should do it.
How many, and how much of that, where the bottom is. Right?
You got it. They need to go through 5 more times. They might need to, get back into obsessive compulsive dieting. Who knows? They may never, ever figure it out in this lifetime.
Right.
Until they die, and they're like, oh,
right.
Okay. Well, what's the point? What was the point of that life? What was I?
Right.
Well, the point was to make sure that the body was thin enough, okay? So you can be like,
Right, that
go to the beach, wear a bathing suit. You can be so cool when you're thin and everybody thinks you're cool. That's what life was about.
Well, and that's like, you know what I mean? Like, I could wear a bathing suit and I could go in public and I could be on the boat and have fun. But guess what? I was that size and I was still insane, and crazy, and
oh, yeah, because you had to control your food. You had to control that's the second part too, is when when you realize that there is no destination, that even though you're thinner, the physicality of the body, it doesn't matter if you meet the standards that you set out to you have to maintain it, so you can never escape. You can never, ever, ever get out. Because
even though it's called maintenance, you're still cycling because of the restriction.
You're almost worse because you're paranoid.
Right.
Yep. And then
you enjoy it, right? Mm-hmm. That weight, that goal, that destination.
Well, what are you enjoying? You're in the body. Why isn't it enjoyable? What do you mean you can't enjoy it? Well, because your whole entire existence is now trapped to keeping the facade, because you know it's a lie. We all know it's a lie. And if you gain the weight back, everybody's going to find out it's a lie, and you suck even worse.
Well, and I can tell that just talking about this and the being in that diet and the loss of the community, like the like I can feel a loss of the sense of wanting a sense of community, and that I'm gonna probably have to let those folks go. You know what I mean?
Well, you can let them be where they're at. You just don't necessarily have the same connection. You might have, it's like
and watch the triggers too, right? Because I noticed that when they're talking about
well,
they triggered too.
Well, is it really triggering? Is it?
I haven't, not in the last 9 days.
So you have to really, if it's only a trigger, if you believe the illusion that being thinner will get you to this place. So once you see that it's a lie, it's a total mirage. It's like, what's the trigger? There is none, because it's a freaking mirage. It doesn't work. It's not true. There's nothing true about it. It's fiction.
Right.
They don't know that yet, and that's okay.
No, exactly.
They're gonna do what they're gonna do because they're surviving with it. That's that's the mechanism of choice. They think that will get them out of survival mode. They don't necessarily use that language, but they should fight for whatever they're fighting for, because that's where they're at until they're done.
And who am I to say what lesson they need to learn?
Correct.
Right? They're on their path.
You got it. Let it. So you can give them grace and forgiveness, and actually be supportive. Be like, I hope it works.
Grace and compassion. Yep.
Totally.
Yep.
Like with the clients I'm working with who need to go back onto dieting, I'm like, I think you should do it. And I think you should work your ass off at it. I think you should put your heart and soul into it. Let's put some integrity into it. And you never know, you might hit the destination. You're going to get to this.
Right. But I imagine, it just has to be hard. And I don't mean, it's because of the feeling that I feel, you want other people to feel that.
Oh, of course. And that's my ultimate alignment is that. But I can't tell them, I can't give them a map and say, here's the route. I know there is a direct route, but maybe you don't, maybe the direct route will happen the moment you take that route and this route and that route and this, and you go around and circle 5 more times, and then at that point you might go, I need the direct route. And you're willing to take the direct route, because the direct route is painful. You have to face your shit. You have to let things come up, and you have to willfully accept them. You know, that's not easy. So whatever it takes for someone to get to a place to do that, you know, it took you whatever it took between the time you talked to me and 4 years between you looking at those YouTubes, willfully listening to them, and then actually applying it.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, is that I couldn't even articulate to you what happened in the last however many years, because, well, I know it's dieting, right? Because it's just been an numbing cycle of the same shit.
I know. And you had to do it so many times to realize this is it. This is it.
Oh, my God.
And that's a sucky moment, too.
It's incredible. Do you know what I mean? It's just...
It's miraculous. That's what it is.
It is. It's a miracle. It feels that way.
It is a miracle. It is a miracle.
Yeah.
I believe it is miraculous, too. It takes... you had to at some point called out for help.
Oh, for sure.
Some point, you had to have said, I need help.
Completely. I surrendered, and, I let myself be. You know what I mean? Without judgment, I let myself be, and it was daily calling on the higher power and saying, God, you gotta.
Help me.
You just gotta.
It showed up.
Knowing that my mom was there to, help this spiral downward.
You know it.
You
know it. She's a part of this right now.
Completely. I know that in the core of my being that, completely.
Wow, she loves you. She loves you.
Well, and that's exactly the place, is that I was having such a hard time remembering my mom, right? Because when you're a caregiver and she becomes, parent-child, that the roles reverse, I couldn't get out of that space.
Oh, and you're there now, though.
When I got to that place of deep, warm love, just compassion and love, for her as a human being, you know what I mean? It was just incredible.
It's very healing. Very healing.
That's a really good word for it. Healing. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, I know how much she loved you, too. It's big. I know. It's beautiful.
Yeah. It is beautiful. It's unbelievable.
I know. And you're not taking any pills, or you're not high as a kite.
It feels that way, though, right?
I know it does. I so know. You're like, oh my God.
Oh my God, yeah. I'm not going to go there, but it's just the whole spinning, and that's where I got to that dark place with all this spinning. Oh, it's hormonal. Oh, it's because I need to exercise. Oh, it's because I need to do this diet. Oh, it's because I need to read this book. I have this thing, I will, you know what, I may just send it to you because I think you would appreciate it. It's I downloaded this app, and it's just these little bubbles where you can connect bubble to bubble, you know what I mean? And I call it the Not So Beautiful Mind. Do you know what I mean? Because it's and this is at my goal weight.
Oh my God.
Right?
Yeah. Misery.
The land that I have been searching for my whole life,
Well, welcome to this territory. It's expansive. It's infinite. Welcome to it. You have all the freedom in the world to navigate this life. You are good enough. Nothing needs to change. You have everything you need. You have all you need is your integrity, and you already have that.
Thank you for that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Oh, my heart is full. Thank you.
Heaven's Gate just opened.
Appreciation.
I'm excited for you. Please, let me know how you're doing. So all I need to do is just you can go onto my website. You know where you filled out that request form?
Yeah. Okay.
Just go to that website and you can pay right there. There's a PayPal right there.
Okay.
It's consult. Yeah, it says 90-minute consult there. Well, congrats. I'm just so excited for you.
I really appreciate it.
Well, I am grateful you sent me just, thank you for letting me know. I mean, this is...
Yeah, I was really called to do that this morning. You know what I mean? On my walk, and I just was feeling it. I was I gotta let her know that's not, you know what I mean? Because it's not we were working together and then the happened.
No,
you know what I mean?
You're getting it through the YouTube videos. you're getting what you need, and that's why I post them.
Yep, exactly. And I wanted you to know that.
Oh, yay, good.
Oh, thank you so much. All right, you take care of yourself, okay?
I will. Thank you so much.
Right.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.